What's up, everybody? I'm Anthony DeiCicchi. You're listening to the On the Water podcast. I got Jimmy Fee with me, and I have two buddies, two special guests, and Mike Kim from Jigging World, and the man that doesn't need an introduction, the Reverend Rob Taylor, is back again. And what's going on, fellas?
Oh, thank you for having us.
It's blowing and we aren't going.
So we're here talking fishing.
Exactly. I just fished with Rob last Thursday, had a good trip. We recapped that in our offshore report that went out last Wednesday. And we had a good trip. We jigged a few tuna.
Yeah.
Had some shots. The most exciting part of the day, for me at least, was the shots at white marlin. And we discussed this. So I talked about this with Anthony, and the matter of debate was whether my first cast was too close and spooked the fish.
Sounded too close.
Well, I mean, I said lead him, and he basically wrapped it around his bill on the first cast.
It was accurate. It was an incredibly accurate cast. Just might not have been where I was actually aiming.
The problem was I was more focused on tuna because it was a tuna trip, not a white marlin trip. So I was like, I went past the first one and it tried to ignore it. And then when the second one popped up and Jimmy's like, oh, there's another one. There's another one. There's another one. I was like, okay.
That doesn't sound like you.
We'll stop for a minute. Yeah, skillies. You know, they're cool for a little bit. Once you catch them, you catch one, you catch them all.
So while last time we had Rob on the podcast, we talked a lot about his fishing background. Mike, this is your first time on here with us. Tell us, what were your early days fishing like, man? How'd you get into it?
My first ever outing, probably like on my own, not a family trip, probably in the Hudson River, just chunking for striped bass.
So I remember you telling me that you used to fish the piers and kind of the banks on the Hudson, right?
So what happened was just growing up, I mean, fishing was never my sport. And my first job out of college was at Samsung corporate, and it wasn't the easiest kind of job. I mean, it was stressful, long hours, long nights. And then I had to find an outlet, something to just relieve stress. And then one day, I mean, I'm from that area, so we're along the Hudson River, and I'm just walking by, just watching what people are doing. And I see a lot of people fishing, and I see them like using pier nets, lifting up like gigantic fish. And I'm like, all right, one, that's kind of gross because they come out of the Hudson River. Number two, I just out of curiosity, I just went up to them. I was like, what kind of species is that? What kind of fish is that? And they were telling me it's striped bass. And I was asking, like, do you eat that? And they're like, absolutely. And I'm like, okay, that's just kind of gross because, like fish out of the Hudson River, you're eating it. You're probably going to have like an extra finger, an extra toe in like a year or two. But long story short, like I was like, you know what? Hell with it. Let me just try it. So went to a local bait and tackle shop, got a rod and a reel combo, got all set up. And after I hooked and landed my first one, it was, I guess, like they say, I was hooked from there. I was hooked right there. So
how long after that did you decide you wanted to work in the fishing industry?
So it's funny. So the first rod that I purchased at this bait and tackle shop was a Tsunami Airwave surf rod. And it ended up snapping because I never had a pier net. And one day I was fishing by myself and I hooked up and I didn't know what to do. So I thought, it's a fishing rod.
Swing them.
Try to swing it probably for, I don't know, like 20 feet high pier. And obviously we all know what happened. It broke. It snapped in half. And the day after, I'm like, went back to the bait and tackle shop and I was like, what do I do? Can I get a new one or can I pay for a replacement? They're like, no, just call this number. That phone number ended up being Bimini Bay Outfitters / Folsom up in Mahwah, New Jersey, which is not too far from where I used to live. And while going through the whole warranty process, I was like, can I speak to your HR department? And they ended up transferring me over to the president of the company at the time. And I was like, I work for Samsung right now. Just out of curiosity, you got any job openings? And then one thing led to another, and that's how I got myself into the industry.
No, it's so funny. Like you say, bringing the rod back. Like I used to work at a tackle shop, and people would bring it back. They're like, I don't know what happened. And like the thing would look like it got run over, like their dog had its way with it.
I was honest though. Yeah. I did say like specifically that I probably did something that I shouldn't have done.
So you are in the minority of that because everyone else would come in like, I just went to make a cast. And I'm like, well, could you explain the tire tracks on it then?
Oh, yeah. But I mean, we go through it all the time nowadays.
So Folsom, we've got some good friends over there. Nick Cicero is just an absolute fishing legend, and he helps with a lot of their gear design. How did you go from Folsom to Jigging World?
Jigging World, the owner he used to own a computer store. And he was an avid fisherman, and I guess, he wanted to change a pace, and he started just bringing in little bit at a time, some fishing gear, and eventually he opened up a Folsom account. And that's how Young, who is the owner of Jigging World / Tack World, where I was able to meet him, and just we kind of hit it off, fished together a couple times.
So he started by selling tackle out of his
computer store. Yep.
That's awesome.
So the first time that I actually visited the shop, Nick Cicero was like, you should go check this guy out. And I was like, okay, why not? It's on the way home. So I drive through, I go in, and legit, it's a big computer store with literally maybe a corner section of just like random things, like maybe like Power Pro, some, you know, OEM jigs, and nothing really to write home about. And I go back, I remember specifically, I go back the next day to work, and I asked Nick, I was like, why'd you send me there? And then Nick was like, this shop is going to be somebody. Because I guess they had conversations previously, like without, you know, themselves. And I guess they were talking about future plans and whatever, his vision and whatever, whatnot. And one thing led to another. Now we're here.
Nick just knew.
Nick just knew.
It's a very Nick. That's a very Nick sensei type of.
But let's put it this way: Nick is not the reason why I left.
Oh, I mean, clearly you saw an opportunity with Young and with Jigging World,
of course.
And how I mean, look at where that company has come to today, man. And
For sure.
When you moved over there, now your role is much more than as a sales rep going to places. You're in the tackle design and the rod design side of things.
Yep. So one thing for me is, I feel very blessed to have been given the opportunity to have been part of a wide scope in this industry. So distribution, manufacturing, retail, buying, and now, you know, branding on the Jigging World side. I think having all that past experience has allowed me to kind of help drive Jigging World into a bigger, on a bigger scale with a wider knowledge base per se, I guess. So it's like.
So how far along was Jigging World by the time you went? By the time you joined them?
Jigging World was still a tackle shop.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jigging World was a tackle shop, and
That's about the time I met you.
yeah. And I would say probably maybe like 2.5 years into my time at Jigging World, that's when we made the decision to separate the two companies, and for me to pretty much lead Jigging World as a brand.
So, how did you guys end up connecting? Like, what was your first introduction of Jigging World Rods?
Through Ralph, you know, fishing, you know, just them coming fishing with me.
Yeah.
Getting on the old, that was the old real easy, you know, doing some tog trips and, you know, catching some big old tog and having a good time.
I mean, just
Was
seeing
that
a guy
a Ralph
like,
Craft Blanks, Jigging World, like early days Blanks connection?
Oh,
Yeah.
Some of the stuff that they were working on, but mostly just fishing interactions. You know, when Ralph wanted to take them fishing and show them a good time, just come aboard, let's go.
I mean, just hearing his story of how he came to be. I mean, just upbringings, early days, fishing.
I remember one of our first tog trips, actually. It was windy out there, too, but you smashed some big ones. Young got that nice one. That's when I told you that we could catch tog on jigs with no crabs.
With no crabs. And it was actually done. We were catching tog with no crab.
With
Just a jig.
Just a jig.
Just a
tog
jig head?
Just a bare tog jig head.
That's those Newport tog, dude. Those things are fired up. They are not like that.
Robbie
in many
has
other
them trained.
places.
And once you get to a certain point, you can tell, and it's time to break out the magic trick.
I haven't seen that.
So, Mike, do you remember what was like the first big hit in terms of rod design that Jigging World had? Like, I remember my first introduction was on the bottom fishing side. So the Black Demon for tog, I fished that with Tom Daffin down in New Jersey, and then the Shogun was what I used and saw a lot of guys using up here on the head boats on the Helen H, like the head for Nantucket Fluke.
For sure.
Yeah.
So was that like the bottom fishing side was kind of what took off first for Jigging World? Or was
I would say so, because actually the first ever production rod Jigging World ever made was the Black Demon. So if you'll notice, actually, even to this day, on the production rod of the Black Demons, the logo is still the original old logo. We have not changed it, so we'll probably keep it at that.
Paying homage to the roots.
Yep.
I like it.
Yep.
So what is it in the rod design? What set the Jigging World? Because it became so popular, it would seem like pretty fast. I mean, the growth was. You guys have to be so happy with how it grew early on. What set those rods apart? The one thing for me would be the price point.
Price point,
too,
definitely.
is that you had a high quality rod, super light, but not at an approachable price.
For sure. Absolutely. I mean, I think he said it best. There's something about the rods when you're tight. There's this fun factor to it.
Yeah.
Like you have fun with the rods. It's like, it's more so than catching fish, but like the whole experience from actually hooking the fish to landing the fish, it's just a very enjoyable experience.
I feel like every rod manufacturer tries to sell that, and it just falls short in a lot of cases. But it's like every now and again you pick a stick up and you're like, whoa, this is different. I think I made the comment because you had given me, I forget what model they were. I think we were fluking south of Nantucket, and it was the first time we were fishing with one of the newest. Oh, what was it? It was the ones with the cork grips.
The Night Ranger.
The Night Ranger.
Yes.
Yep. I was fluking with that thing, and you were like, "What do you think?" I'm like, "It's like having sex for the first time without a condom." I'm like, this, like, it was different. It was awesome.
No, for sure, definitely. I mean, we have a ton of rods out today, but I'm happy to say that each rod has its own personality.
Yeah.
Apart from price point, you pick up the Onyx rod, the Nexus 2.0, the Hybrid, the Night Ranger. They each, going back to, they all have their own personality.
I mean, the other important thing is that the people behind the design of the rod are very avid fishermen. So they understand the nuances, right? It's just like this rod needs to shut off here. Like when you have that direct connection with the person designing the rod and into the fishery, you know what I mean? You're not taking a rod that is meant for something else and trying to make it work. It's like, no, this is specific to this and specific to that. Or in the case of some of the rods, it's like, well, this rod can actually do a whole bunch because they understand the whole fishing aspect from start to finish, right? Like, because they're out there on the water testing stuff, And then one thing I know about him is, too, he's a perfectionist. So if it's not exactly right, he's right back in the factory and they're tweaking it right away,
So how much do you rely on guys like Robbie, and you guys have a lot of very accomplished fishermen fishing your stuff that, are kind of ambassadors of, you go by your booth in any of the local shows. It's like the who's who kind of across the different types of fishermen. So how much do you rely on those guys and their input when you're designing that next iteration of a rod or the next concept?
Oh, I mean, more so than I can describe in words. I mean, at the end of the day, it's his job to be out on the water all the time. Now for me, it's kind of went the opposite way where I don't have the luxury to be out on the water all the time. And when I do find the time that I can, obviously that's where I heavily rely on, just leaning on this guy right here, which we are definitely super blessed to have part of our team. So,
and in all honesty, he's fished with me enough. I don't even really have to give him input because he already knows. I mean, he's very good at seeing that big picture. And then he's like, here, I made this. And I'm like, this thing is amazing. So it's not like I was like, oh, can you do this, this, and this? I mean, these two, him and Yang, understand the rod process and what it takes. And then they just come out with these awesome goodies. And it's just like, even the Nexus 2.0. I mean, I loved the original Nexus. And he's like, oh, we're going to make it even better. And I was like, I don't even know if that's possible. But let's see what you can come up with. And then he hands it to me, and I'm like, whoa.
I mean, the one nice thing, too, is that you having all the rods, being set up with all those rods, you're literally putting them in the hands of, prospective customers.
Everyone,
I mean, these guys actually get to feel them. Like, Chris Megan goes on your boat last year, feels the luminous jigging rods, and like, what's the next thing Chris wants, dude? Is a whole bunch, all the luminous jigging rods.
What did you think of the silver bullet with the really light 30-pound braid for vertical jigging tuna?
Just wait till Chris feels it. He's going to want them next. But yeah, you can only get so far in a tackle shop or on a trade show floor, like bending the rod against the carpet or getting the feel for it like that, to actually be out with the charter captain, use it, feel what it's like to really bounce a jig or catch a fish on it. And the other thing is like the durability test. Like, nobody puts a rod through its paces more than a guy on his first ever trip who has no idea how to fight a fish. I mean, you must see them put into horrific shapes.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and trust me, it's not only customers. Sometimes your captain, after many, many days of chartering, will do things that are like, oh, boy. Like, I wouldn't recommend doing this, but like the other day, we get this beautiful fish. I'm taking a picture of it. I'm just so focused on, all right, this 40-pounder, let's get a picture of it and get it back in the water. I forget that it's not unhooked and the bail's closed on the rod. So then I go to throw it over and it just goes with the rod straight in the rod holder, goes boink.
Is that a shot at me?
Oh, that's right. You did that too. I did it too, Cheech.
It makes me feel better.
You're not the
I
only-
literally did that for the first time ever on Rob's boat filming a TV show.
Yeah.
I released a nice striper.
Yep.
Still had the hook in its mouth.
Yep. It happens.
Wow.
It does happen. But guess what? Rod was fine. Everything
One of the
was
best,
okay.
Tests of rod durability I've ever seen happened to be a Jigging World rod, and we had a
the picture.
a high 60-inch bluefin that we had fought for
2.5 days.
Oh my God, dude. A whole month of Sundays it took us to get that thing in. Like, we were all spent, and then we're like, okay, we need to it was me, Cheech, and Chris Megan, and we throw it across our laps for a photo, and nobody has any strength left to lift this thing. We lost it, but we were like, oh, let's get the rod in the shot. Let's make sure everything's in there. So we'd be like, look at this fish we caught on this gear. And the fish slipped out, lands on top of the rod, which does this horrible horseshoe.
The butt of the
between
rod
the gunnels.
was on the gun on the port gunnel, and the tip of the rod and the top third of the rod was on the starboard gunnel, right across, open.
I remember that picture.
32 regulator, and the whole weight of that fish slid right out of our hands across the rod, and it just.
The best part was Andrew Burke, who was our producer at the time, kept taking photos. So you have like everyone smiling. Here's the tuna. Then all of a sudden you knew exactly whose rod it was because I'm laughing, Chris is laughing, and Cheech's face is just like it's just pure horror as this thing slips off.
That was
and
my
bends
baby. I love that rod.
It's dude, still out there catching.
It's still catching fish.
Right. So kids, remember, don't do this stuff. This is all things not to do. Yes. Not to do.
Dude, the next fish I hooked on that rod, I was literally like holding the rod out here and like looking in the other direction, just expecting it to blow up, but the thing's still ticking.
Mike, I want to talk about your fishing soon, but before that, you're designing the rods from the blank on up.
Mm-hmm.
As least technical as possible. How do you design a rod blank? Like what if I were, where do you begin?
I think it really comes down to, since, just to put it out there, Jigging World uses predominantly only carbon fiber as raw materials for our fishing rods. And the best way to explain it, depending on how you want to achieve, for bottom fishing per se.
Yeah, let's say a
for
fluke
bottom
rod.
fishing, most anglers enjoy a more moderate action rod. So what does that mean? So basically what that means is the higher carbon content that you utilize in a fishing rod, it's going to be a much faster action rod. So to achieve a more moderate taper, we'll use a little bit lesser grade. And then if you want to get a little bit more granular, the three main countries that we source our carbon fiber is from Japan, Korea, and China. And each country has its own personality too as well after the whole baking process. Chinese carbon fiber, not saying that it's inferior to Japanese carbon fiber, but just the way that it feels afterwards, it's much different. So what we've been able to achieve is mixing and matching different country of origins carbon fiber to pretty much achieve the types of bend that we desire in our fishing rods.
So using a certain type of carbon fiber from one of your sources, you might use that for one part of the rod, and then another one, and that's how you achieve the action, from fast action where most of the bend's in the very tip, moderate toward the middle, and then a slow action rod where the bend is all the way through.
A lot of blends happen too, for sure, to make it happen. But recently we've been able to start using a little bit more premium carbon fiber, especially even like on the Nexus 2.0s. The first series was Chinese carbon fiber, but now it's Japanese carbon fiber. So most people will notice that it does have a snappier action to it, but under load, it still achieves that moderate bend, just like their OG Nexus rods.
Okay. And how does it still have that moderate bend? Like that's just the quality of the carbon fiber there, or? I don't want to get too
Jimmy, are you getting into proprietary information right now?
Well, I don't know. So I don't want to get too deep in the weeds.
That's like your grandmother's quahog recipe that she didn't give you, and now I know why.
My family's Irish, dude. None of those people could cook anything.
All right, those recipes anyways.
Everglades Boats is an industry leader in premium offshore fishing boats. Founded in 1997 by boating industry legend and former Boston Whaler executive Bob Dougherty, Everglades revolutionized the boat building industry with the invention of the RAMCAP process for one-piece unsinkable hulls. Respected for its renowned hull ride, Everglades builds center console and hybrid boats from 25 to 45 feet that make a statement about the status and savvy of their owner. Everglades has received numerous industry awards and achieved an unparalleled reputation for superior safety, performance, and quality. For more information about Everglades boats, stop by your local dealer or visit evergladesboats.com. Everglades Boats, built for beyond. So, favorite fish to catch, fish for?
We're actually talking about this on the way up here. It's got to be hands down tog. Blackfish, tautog, whatever you want to call it.
Which is also transitioning. He also, I found out, is an avid, like, smallmouth, too. Because the similarities between smallmouth and tog.
Yeah. Like you drop a little Ned rig down, and they swim away with it, and you just see your line swimming away. Oh, I mean, it's epic.
Oh, dude,
it's epic.
We did something a couple years ago in the magazine where we're like, can't get out on the salt, like, try this close alternative, and it was the one for tog was smallmouth bass.
I remember when blackfish season was closed, the owner Young, he started eel fishing in the Delaware River, and I will never ever drop this. He goes to me, he goes like, "It's just like blackfishing." So I'm like, "No way." So I go with him one day, pitch black, no cell service, like no lights. If it's a cloudy day, it's like pitch black. But anyhow, we're out there eel fishing, and it's nothing close to blackfishing. And I'm like, I don't know what you feel when you're togging, but this is definitely not blackfishing.
So you mean what you're saying is actually fishing for the eels,
exactly,
not using eels for bait.
Yeah, freshwater eel. Yeah, freshwater eels.
What time of year was it?
I think it was during the summer.
Oh, so it wasn't even like it's cold and togging's cold.
No.
It was just...
I need to get my fix.
Yeah.
He was like, no, they bite like a tog. And I'm like, oh, really? That's what I love too. Setting the hook at just at the right time, just going through those bites, those taps, and then you get that big crunch and you just set that hook. That's what I was looking forward to. And it was nothing, not even remotely close. And I was like, don't ever take me again.
That was the best. So animated. I love that dude.
Yeah.
So I was hoping you'd say tog because I wanted to transition into the spring. You caught a major milestone for blackfish. And if you were, I'm going to ask Rob this one. A 10-pound tog is equivalent to like what size striper, you would say?
I don't know. Maybe say a 40-pounder.
Okay. 40-pounder. So then a 20-pound tog. What's that? Put that in striper
77 pounds.
Okay.
80 pounds.
So there are 20-pound tog are not caught. Maybe there's 1-2 caught every season, tops, I'd say. You got one this past spring. And not only that, like you got it with, I'll let you tell the story. You were actually there.
So much to talk about that day, but it was so awesome. Number one, that this happened in New Jersey, which is super, super hard to get that 20. I mean, there's other people that's going a little bit further south where then obviously they're not as abundant, but your chances are a little bit higher. But, nonetheless, I mean, a 20-pounder is a 20-pounder. It doesn't matter where it's caught, but just me being from Jersey, home turf. And on top of that, with Tom Daffin, who's a big part of our success too as well. I mean, how much better does it get than that?
So Tom's got a cooler on his boat, or at least he did, where it was a Jigging World sticker. Yeah. And then, did you guys make those tog stickers for him? Or did he do that?
No. But with all those 20s.
With the tog, it'd be like 21, 22. So he had a sticker on this cooler with each like 20-pound plus tog caught aboard his boat. For sure. He'd caught plenty of them. Yeah. But I would wager that all of them, maybe all of them except for one, were caught at his deep water spots. He fishes 100 plus feet of water. Yeah. I mean, you're talking 28, 30-mile run to some of his places. But that's not where your fish came from.
No, we were so it ended up being a day where we couldn't get offshore. So we had to stay in tight. And once I knew we weren't going offshore, which most of my trips with Tom is offshore for a trophy. And once I found out that we had to stick in shore, I was like, okay, I'll just have a fun day. It's a meet trip. So I started just pounding beers, having fun with my group of friends. And it's crazy how things happen when it's least, when it's unexpected like that.
Always be prepared.
Yeah. Always. I mean, now I know, but it was just awesome. Like I was a little I wasn't drunk, but you know, a couple beers in,
having a good time, yeah.
Exactly. And then out of nowhere, I just feel crunch, crunch. And then I feel it swimming away. And then I was like, oh, okay, it might be a little roaster because they were very active that day. Set the hook, and I was like, oh, wait, this is, I woke up real quick right there. I was like, all right, this is actually pretty big. And even Tom couldn't believe when we netted it how big it was. He was like, he's never seen a big fish that size on the Cape May Reef that close.
That's wild.
And you guys, the initial plan, like you couldn't get offshore because the weather was bad. You couldn't push the trip because it was the last day of the spring tog season. Yeah. And man, just it's one of those where it feels meant to be. You know, like you couldn't get offshore, so you ended up right there at Cape May Reef and that's an area that gets a lot of pressure.
Yes.
And that's at a lot of the Jersey tog spots, I think that is the chief problem. Yep, there's so much pressure. These fish hit the minimum size, and however many are taken out of the population right there. That's why Tom does so well offshore, where fewer boats are going to go. Mm-hmm. It's harder to fish out there, but you caught that fish somewhere. Like I think it's really cool. It just adds a whole nother element to it. And what a fish, man.
No, that was a blessing. I mean, for me, I remember clearly. I mean, I haven't been fishing that long. Probably started fishing really actively maybe like 10 years ago. But I've lost a lot of big fish in the early days that I've become very meticulous when it goes to prepping, like tying knots, changing out braid, changing out leader when you know you should, but
yeah,
everybody pushes it. Yeah,
everyone pushes it.
Recently up until that trip, I go out fishing and no real thoughts are running through my head when I'm tight.
Yeah,
but this fish, oh my goodness,
you just knew.
All these thoughts like, is my line okay? Is my leader okay? Was it chafed? Did I do I did all my knots correctly? I mean, just so many things just running through my head, just hoping that, because no one else knew, but I knew that it was a big fish.
So tell us about the gear you had it on, because it was spinning tackle, right?
Yeah.
So what was the setup?
So it was a custom rod built on a Night Ranger 7.2 heavy blank, with the Shimano Stella 3000.
It's a small reel, man.
Small reel, 15-pound test braided line, 30-pound fluorocarbon, loop knot to a jig that probably was just sitting in my tackle bag because I don't get to fish as much as I used to. But
dude, that's the perfect recipe for letting your guard down. Like, you're coming out of a letdown of being like, all right, well, it's our last day to fish because tog season's over after this. And we just got blown off of like a trophy trip. Mm-hmm. And now we're going to go mess around. Like, that's usually when guys like me say, screw it. Like, I can mess around and fish something stupid light or, not be meticulous about the shape. It's like, I'm just fishing in the nursery right now and we're just having fun. Like, there's nothing here I care to catch anyways other than more fish.
Sure. But remember, it can happen at any time.
So true.
I always tell people, even when the bite's good, you get that little bit of fray, but you just want to catch one more, just take a minute, cut it, retie it.
Now, Rob, you use pretty heavy tackle for your togging out of Newport.
Yeah, I mean, to a degree.
What's your tog? What's your go-to?
I'm only using 40-pound.
Okay.
Step it up. Sometimes 60 if I know it's nasty. But I mean, that's still a good 15-pound braid is very strong if you have a long enough top shot. And look, 30-pound fluoro is fairly strong too. It can be done.
Yeah.
He did it.
What's your go-to tog rod?
Oh, I don't know. I like so many.
Yeah.
I mean, he got me on the Night Ranger, and that blank is awesome for jigging.
Yeah, he has actually the same rod. Same exact rod.
Yep. So I became addicted to that. I may actually try one in conventional this year. And there's another rod that's coming out, though, that I really like that, should be ready sometime soon. I don't even know if we can talk about it.
No, we can. It's going to be called the Retro Series.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good bait rod.
What we're trying to market this rod is an overall, mainly a bottom fishing rod, where it has a very, very parabolic bend to it. So kind of trying, not imitating, but very similar characteristics to a glass rod.
Okay.
But over half the weight, over half the diameter, and again, super sensitive.
That's cool.
So like,
Awesome.
For example, we've been testing that out for I think a good year now, and Young's a very well-rounded fisherman, but when it comes to tog, I mean, I outfish him like it's like doesn't compare.
He's not even here to defend himself.
But he won't
pretty
admit
low.
it.
Even,
No, it's all
even for
good.
you, Mike.
It's okay. He won't see this.
I'm going to send it to
hear
him.
it though.
But then we take the retro blank and we build some custom rods out of it, and he's fishing, and he is pounding fish like I've never seen before, like left and right, more fish than me. That I just had to just watch him. And I knew it right there that he was one of those anglers for tog that was setting the hook a little bit too early. Hence, the slower action characteristics of this new retro rod. He's fishing still the same way that he used to, but the give in the tip delayed it long enough so that he was hooking tog properly.
You get that right bite. And it's good, especially if you're, like you come somewhere like Rhode Island where it's very active. They call it noisy fishing, right? Where you're just getting so many bites. And if you can wait through for the right bite, and like with that very moderate rod, that right bite is what comes through, and that's what you feel. Whereas if you have like something super, super fast, it's like,
You're just ripping the hook through its mouth pretty much. But with the Night Ranger, vice versa, super, super fast action rod, but under load it still has a very moderate bend to it. But something about the Night Ranger being such a thin wall blank and such a thin diameter rod, when I say this, I'm not exaggerating. You can literally feel fish swimming around your line.
yes.
Because it's so sensitive. So for me, I don't know if I'm explaining this correctly, but when I fish a Night Ranger, it's like I can anticipate when they're going to chomp. It makes no sense, but like...
But that is some of the advice that... I always thought of it as kind of funny advice, but they say to hook tog, like you almost have to have a sixth sense for when the bite's going to come, because they can hit so quickly. But having something that's more sensitive to know, to just kind of tip you off, like, all right, time to pay attention, time to stop bullshitting with Cheech, like start like paying attention to what's happening with the rod. So,
You definitely can feel that. Like that's one thing that the more I've togged fish, like I was just guessing out of the gate. Like it literally what unless it swam away with my jig, I'll be the first to admit I was just guessing. But once you're like, all right, I'm starting to get aggravated. Like I got to figure this out because I want to be a better tog fisher. And I love fisherman. I love doing it. You can feel when it's right to set the hook. Like there's just. It's almost like you can feel it go into their mouth, and it's like, nah.
Yeah. That Night Ranger I can feel when my jig's this high off the bottom, and I know it's already time to swing.
Yeah.
The vibration that it emits from the tip all the way to the butt section to the reel seat, I personally haven't felt a rod that mimics the Night Ranger. Hence why it's very tough for me to fish any other rod.
Yeah. Family owned and operated for over 65 years, AFCO represents unparalleled quality, performance, and reliability when it counts most. From inventing the roller guide to introducing the world's first pair of true fishing shorts, which are some of the most comfortable shorts you'll ever own, by the way. AFCO not only delivers products proven to perform on the water, but are true leaders of conservation as well. Their pledge to protect and conserve has 10% of your AFCO purchases going directly to supporting conservation initiatives. Beyond their fishing shorts, a couple of my personal favorites are the Barricade Elite bibs and jacket, as well as their line of Reaper sweatshirts, pullovers, and jackets. Check them out at afco.com. AFCO, any fish, any water. Take us through when you start feeling that tog scratch. Like, when do you know? When do you know when to swing? Like you personally.
It's the feel of your tip kind of slowly starting to point downwards.
Yeah.
Not those tap,
As
tap,
opposed
taps.
to coming right back up on the tap.
Exactly. So for me, I'm using such a light line and leader, I feel everything. Opposed to someone, there's other people who are catching big tog time and time again with like 50-pound braided line, 80-pound fluorocarbon. I mean, they're accustomed to that. So to each their own. But for me, it's just like I want to be aware of everything. I just want to be aware. So it's like catch-22. Like you got to pick one or the other. Like what are you trying to achieve? And for me, just using very light tackle, like now I've been accustomed to knowing exactly when I need to set the hook versus when I shouldn't.
We got to get 10-pound tog this year. That's like my one like hanging benchmark out there.
You haven't gotten them a 10-pound tog yet?
He's trying. Don't blame
them.
Yeah, it's true. I every time I go on Rob's boat, I ratchet it up another pound. I'm getting closer. I had an 8 with you. I had 9 with you.
I've only dogfished with Robbie once.
Dogfish once with me, and it was like 10, 11 foot seas, and we actually ended up just bass fishing because it was so rough.
I came ready. I caught all but one tog that day. Mm-hmm. I was dialed.
Wait, is that the recent trip that you were like so amped up to go to?
I was so jacked up, dude.
He was texting me legit.
Flying so high.
No, he was texting me legit till probably like 1 a.m.
I was like, I'm taking you out, Kim. I'm gonna catch a 25 tomorrow.
We had one good bite that day in that dirty water on that wreck, and I think I pulled the hook on it.
The more excited he is for a trip, the worse it ends up being. Like I've
what do you mean? It still was awesome.
It was awesome.
Right. The striped bass fishing was incredible. The tog fishing was not what Cheech had built it up to be.
We just went to plan B.
It was a tremendous plan B. We were fishing the flutter spoons, which is something that I hadn't done before. I'd caught one by accident, not by accident, but I'd caught one on a flutter spoon while I was testing it out. I was like, how does this thing work? And man, I caught like a lifetime supply of stripers on flutter spoons that day.
And that's how you know how versatile the Jigging World lineup is, because we literally took our tog rods and cut the jigs off and just tied on
a lot of people
spoons.
asked like, what is like one best point about Jigging World rods? I mean, he said it just best right there. Versatility. For example, you take the Nexus 2.0, any of our rods, you can do so many things with it. So it's catered to like the mass market where most people go into a tackle shop asking for a rod that can do it all.
Yeah. You want an all-around rod, something that's going to be able to clip off the tog jig, put on a flutter spoon, and still not be overwhelmed by that big bait or the stripers on there. And that's we did that with the Nexuses and the Night Rangers.
They
that
outperform,
day.
Right? I mean, some of the rods some of the things I end up doing with them, there is a better option, but it's amazing how the other option will perform. Just the other day we hooked into a big bluefin. If I had had a ghost hunter, that's the right tool for that application. But we were fishing with a luminous, and guess what? It still did it. Yeah. We got that fish almost boat side, and then the hook just fell out. That happens. But catching a 90-inch class bluefin on a 350 gram high pitch, spinning rod, when we have probably about that twin power probably had about 35 pounds of drag, little hand cupping here and there. But, that if we had gotten that fish and landed it, that's something with a rod that retails. For
$200.
$200.
So that goes to show, going back to carbon fiber as our raw material, lower grade carbon fiber doesn't mean inferior to like a higher grade carbon fiber. Because the ghost hunters use higher grade carbon fiber, while the luminous uses lower grade, but the lower grade achieves that more parabolic bend. And like you said, by using different materials like that, we're able to achieve different price points.
Right. And the fight time just ends up being a little bit longer and stuff like that. But as you know, you have fought giant tuna on ghost hunters, and you guys got some very big fish boat side in, probably under an hour?
Yeah. Yeah, he put the limit on about 45 minutes an hour, and then it was you're either going to break this thing off or you're going to stop it. And we stopped it, dude. We stopped both of them until we got them both side, grabbed the leader, and then as soon as you took the bend out of the rod and there was no shock there, that's when the leader finally popped. With those,
right, and that was 100-inch class fish. Yeah, those were extremely large.
That's interesting how like the source of the materials give that the different personality. Like they do the job, but they do the jobs differently. They feel different. They have different personalities. What's the difference between, because I wouldn't be able to explain it if somebody asked me, what's the difference between the high pitch version and the slow pitch jigging versions of luminous?
So the high pitch is meant for like speed jigging.
Okay.
And slow pitch is intended purposes is actually like slow pitch fishing.
So
it's a true slow pitch rod.
It's literal.
But
high speed.
Exactly. Slow. Exactly. High pitch, slow pitch. But when we go back to versatility, when you saw me first fishing the luminous slow pitch rod, you were probably like, what is this guy trying to do? And then you actually fell in love with it. Am I saying go out offshore tuna fishing with the luminous slow pitch rod? No. But it goes to show the versatility in our rods where you can take that slow pitch rod. And if you were to hook.
Yeah. I mean, we did. I mean,
it is a 70-inch fish on it.
And going from slow pitch to speed jigging, it's a good transition. I find it easier to get someone to have a correct motion and work a jig properly with a slow pitch to start. And then from there, once they kind of have mastered that, then we can go on to the, high speed jigging.
Yeah. You get more margin of error with the...
No, yeah, so...
It's just an easier rhythm to pick up because of the way that, you're using more of the reel and not so much of the rod, to help manipulate the jig. And then because, if you haven't jigged before, sometimes fast jigging is complicated. It's just, it's right here. It's can you do this?
Yeah. We saw that on the trip last week.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah. Big Jim, I had my dad out there, and he'd never done any kind of fishing like that, the speed jigging, and it just wasn't. That metal was down there. Not.
Some days that gets the bites, though.
Look at by the end, though, Big Jim's rhythm was fine. He was watching, and he's very observant.
Yeah.
I think Jimmy doesn't give him enough credit. We gave him the Ronzi. He had that Ronzi dialed in. I mean, hooked a big fish right off the bat. I mean, I think everybody took a little time to warm up to the speed jigging, and once they did,
I came in hot, Rob. I was ready right from the get go.
You were
I botched the first bite I had.
You did,
but you were kind enough not to rub my face in it, like a dog that went on the carpet. You're like the whole time. Rob's like, just if you get a bite on the drop, like start reeling, don't set the hook. And what do? As I set the hook, pull the thing basically just pull the slack out, and the fish spits the hook. But the next time I got it, so
yep. I mean, that was the advantage, right, to those O'Sheas is that. On the drop, when you do get bit on the drop, all you have to do with the O'Shea is engage the handle and start cranking, and it auto engages. Which sometimes on the spinning tackle is the hardest thing, is getting hit on the drop because you have to manually flip over the bail. Mm-hmm. So it is a very, quick. You have to be very quick.
Buzzards Bay Yacht Sales knows that a great boat dealer is as important as a great boat. Why? Because new or used, you're buying a boat with 100 different systems and components that need tuning, training, troubleshooting, and sometimes repair. While most boat dealers are your best friend only until the sale is closed, Buzzards Bay Yacht Sales has developed a bulletproof reputation for building long-term relationships with their customers. Before, during, and most importantly, after the sale. Go ahead, ask around. We challenge you to find anyone who has anything but great things to say about Tom O'Toole and his team. With 6 locations from Freeport, Maine to Jupiter, Florida, including Marblehead, Massachusetts, and 3 offices on Cape Cod, Buzzards Bay Yacht Sales is committed to providing the best possible product, customer service, and support for both recreational boaters and passionate sport fishermen. It's true, who you buy from is as important as what you buy. Visit buzzardsbayyacht.com today. Do you prefer jigging tuna with conventional tackle or spin tackle?
Honestly, I like having both, so when I get tired, I can just switch and go to the other hand.
Good point, dude.
But I have grown to love the conventional much, much more. I mean, I think my go-to setup right now for these school bluefin is that O'Shea jigger on that silver bullet in that either 350 or 450 with 30-pound braid.
I mean, that made quick work of the mid 40-inch tuna that we hooked.
30-pound braid is extremely strong, and that silver bullet has just it's got to be one of the nicest bends, and it just fits comfortably in your hand. I mean, that thing when it loads up, that 30-pound braid probably breaks it closer to 50, but. It is the diameter gives you such less scope so that even on that day where we had pretty much with the wind with the tide, you could already tell that the 65-pound braid setups were like this, where the 30 pounds were straight up and down. I mean, I think all of our bites came mostly on the conventionals, maybe one on the spinning, but everything.
I think pretty much everything was on the conventional.
Conventional with
all
the 30
ones we landed were conventional.
Yep,
for sure.
Straight up and down.
Mike, so by the time you start working on a rod, by the time you have an idea for what you want to build, from there, how long does it take to get it to market, to the point when somebody can buy it? Let's use the AMF series, the Alpha Mike Foxtrot series. From the time you started working on that to now that they're available, how long does that take?
I would say one of our key advantages is our time frame from just brainstorming to execution and having available in market. It's quicker than most. That's one of our fortes. And when we do make the samples to go through testing, and that's when it goes directly to Rob and our other team members to really put it through its ringer, to really make sure that it's going to achieve durability, versatility, sensitivity, just the whole 9 yards of everything that we want to portray in our Jigging World rods. But, just ultimately, it comes down to really Young deciding what rods he wants to put out at certain times a year. And it's very good in a sense that him and I have very similar fishing styles, because I never have to question his direction or his ideas. It just naturally, I understand it. So that's why I feel like we're such a good tag team partner, just making things happen together. And, so just going back to AMF, it really depends on the series and time of year. I would say AMFs were kind of, it wasn't rushed, but it came out really quick.
It did.
It came out really quick because we knew as soon as, it was just perfect timing. We got the samples just in time for the Rhode Island tuna bite last year.
Yep.
So what was that? I mean, if we had it last year in like August.
Yeah, I mean, by the time I got it, we had already put 4 on the heavier ones. We had put 4, March. 85 class inch fish on it.
So after brainstorming, samples, testing, 7 months.
So that's one advantage of being kind of having two guys at the top with you and Young. Mm-hmm. And you have these bigger companies, and that can be a slow ship to turn and get that stuff done, get it out there. There's a longer process, but you guys are able to be a lot more nimble.
Very quick to react.
Yes.
Very quick to react to give the market what they need.
And the nice thing is, I feel like they don't go through many changes because Michael and Young, I mean, let's not forget too, Young is an excellent angler. Mm-hmm. I mean, you want to talk about like as far as fishing skill goes, you're talking top notch. So like when they conceptualize and then they describe what they want, when they get that back, there's very, very little tweaking. That it's just because they know how to get it right the first time. And they've already been through. I mean, understanding rod materials and all that is where these guys are top notch. But then understanding the fishing side, having both of those, I mean, it's hard to beat that when you're designing a rod. It's because like you don't get something that you're like, oh, this isn't quite right. It's like, oh, maybe we'll change this. There's very small tweaks, either guide size and things like that.
So when planning a new rod, are you looking for gaps in your own lineup? Is that what determines which one you're making next? Or is it something that like maybe it's a particular interest you have? You're like, I'm really into tuna fishing right now. How can I build a better tuna popping rod? How does it work?
I mean, yes and no. Of course, we always want to take existing product and make it better. But I hate to say it, but like in the beginning, it's not like we had a clear-cut plan. Like, I mean, to be straightforward, we never thought that we'd be here today to the capacity that we are in our area. And to see it continue to grow, it's just like, oh crap, like we better kind of
keep pushing the bar.
Keep pushing the bar, because now our name is recognized, Jigging World is recognized. So it's not like back in the day where it was like, all right, let's go make another.
Yeah, nothing to lose.
Now we have strategy, and we need to execute with a strategy already planned out. So for us, it's all a learning curve as we continue to grow. But like you said, one of the things that Young and I will never ever change about Jigging World is just giving the market what they need, what they want, and really, I guess, pressing the issue in terms of like not taking things and changing them out too quickly like other brands do. We want to give enough shelf life to consumers, to dealers, to really kind of see the whole thing unravel at a market level.
That makes perfect sense because I've seen it. oh man, I've done it with reels where I'm like, you know what? I'm finally ready to buy the new like X. You know, here's my $1,000 for it, and wouldn't you know, here's a new one, and they brought the price point down. I'm like, oh, like you dope. Why didn't you just wait? So that gets a little frustrating when you have companies turning over. Here's the version 3, here's the version 4, and it's every 2 years.
Yeah.
But giving something time to get out there and for fishermen to actually use it and not feel like they're using the old one. For sure. You know? So that's... I
mean, before we revamped the Nexus 2.0, I mean, it had a shelf life of maybe 6.5, 7 years.
Yeah. I remember the first time I used the Nexus was with you.
Right.
And we were out... what was amazing about it was we were trolling tube and worms with the conventional version of it and throwing docks with the spinning version of it. And that was one of those shows where we came back and I got a million emails. I know you got a million emails of people saying, what rod is that? What setup is that? And, you know, everybody wanted to know what exactly we were throwing, because that's same thing happened with the flutter spoon. What rod are you using for that? Because these techniques, guys, they drilled on the whatever the hot striper technique is that season, and they want to know the right rod for it. So to have something that's versatile enough to throw the dock and jig the flutter spoon, it's a big thing for guys, especially not everybody's going fishing enough. They're going to be super specialized on their gear.
Oh, man, I mean, there's some stuff we haven't even talked about that I got to play with over the past week. That's really nice.
So I want to come back to real time. Like, we just got our hands on the AMFs. We've had ghost hunters in our hands for a long time now. If I'm going from the ghost hunter to AMF, what am I going to notice is the biggest differences, having never fished the AMF series?
So the ghost hunter, to be clear, is a tuna popping rod,
and a jigging rod.
Jigging rod. That's right. So it's a line of kind of heavy duty. What are the qualities of the ghost hunter? What makes it a
super fast, a ton of backbone? I would say people who have intentions on just not really fighting fish, but just winching fish in, just really getting it to the boat side as quickly as possible.
If you're hunting ghost, I mean, the name says it all. I mean, you know, as you've seen, I mean, in the show that you guys did with Captain Dom, it was like, that was a ghost. I mean, literally, that fish you put on that tackle.
That was a great fish. Is
to challenge. It's for the most extreme situations. You know what I mean? I mean, it's like, if you're trying to catch a 500 to 600 pound bluefin on a spinning rod, if you're trying to jig up like the biggest, baddest grouper, or, you know, anything that is just going to challenge, that you need to put heavy drag and lifting pressure to lift it, right? Some fish won't even come off the bottom if you're not at 40 pounds of drag, right? It's just, you aren't gaining anything, and you need a rod that can literally lift them. And that's extreme.
Yeah. That's I bought that ghost hunter after a trip with Captain Dom south of the vineyard. I've got the 150, to throw up to 150 gram lures, and then you bought yours. You bought a 200 around the same time, and that has been our go-tos forever. I'm excited to go to the next evolution, I think.
And the reason I got that is because I was sick of like throwing into feeds, worrying about what I was going to hook, and that was more of like a, not the pinnacle of like the heaviest. And Young actually handed me that rod, and he goes, "Fish this, it should handle whatever you hook, but you'll actually have fun with it." And that's what it was. So like, I'm interested of seeing what like where AMF takes it, because the things I take away from Ghost Hunter is they could mess with anything you hooked. You didn't have to worry about the rod. It was
like the popping rod of the time before that was like the OTI 8-footer, which was just, man, it would get the fish, but good Lord, man, it put a hurting on you. Like that was do you remember those?
But the thing with the ghost hunters, and this goes more so for the conventional ones, because I mean, when you're throwing stick baits and stuff at fish, it's like, how many casts do you actually take in a day? Like, you're running around, you get your shots, but when you're jigging, it's all day, and that's when you had the confidence of being able to handle whatever you hooked, but it didn't beat the shit out of you all day jigging it, because it was light. It was a big, it was a very capable package and a light setup that could handle a lot. It could outpunch its weight class.
So the AMF does that and much more.
Correct.
If we're talking on the popping side, It is our first ever one-piece popping rods. All the other popping rods that we have, Luminous, Black Widow, Ghost Hunter popping, those are all two-piece where it's an 80-20 split where the top section goes into the top section of the foregrip. The AMFs are now officially our first ever one-piece popping rods where we have it from 2, 3, 4, 500. So the 400 and the 500 are available in the market right now. And then the 200 and the 300 are being tested by Robbie and some other fishy people right now.
You will feel the difference in that one-piece rod, how it loads, how you fight fish. I mean, it is...
We very nearly saw how the 200 did against a white marlin, dude.
Yep, we did. Yep.
Maybe it might have been 300.
That was... no, that was the 200. We had the 2 and 300 both rigged up. You know, I mean, we've put it through its paces. I mean, it is... Put it this way, as far as popping rods go, it is awesome. You want to talk about like enjoyable when you hook a fish? Because I've seen some people with their popping rods, and I'm not gonna say anything, but I feel like that they're gonna get pulled out of the boat with the way that the leverage is and where that is, where what you can achieve with a one-piece rod. I mean, the feel is unbelievable. It can cast a popper.
Enjoyable,
mile.
But still the insane amount of strength and power far beyond the Ghost Hunters.
Really?
And when you talk about enjoyable and being easier on the angler, that comes to a more moderate action.
So
right? Is that where that comes
both
in?
the jigging and the popping do have a softer tip to it versus the Ghost Hunter popping. So with the softer tip on the popping series, you can launch soft plastics like NLBNs, Ron Z's, and on the jigging side, it's a little bit more forgiving in a way that it's not going to beat you up too much when you're tight all day. It's going to have a little bit of a load, a little bit of a deeper load than the Ghost Hunter jigging.
Which also is forgiving to bad form.
Yes. And you have the luxury to be able to lean back a little bit more too.
I don't think I care for the way you looked at me when you said that.
We just had to lock your arm up a little bit. You're almost there.
One of these days.
I'm not even going to comment.
Oh, glass houses, Cheech. I mean,
I've seen some of the funniest form out of Jim on our tuna missions.
No, his on our trip was very good, actually. It was pretty much
flawless.
picture perfect.
I hope so. When's the last time we tuna fished? Last season?
You and me together? Yeah.
Yeah.
So is he coming on your trip coming up? You have a trip booked with me. What is it?
August 8th. I am pushing hard for Mr. Fee to join us.
I think I should.
He has a spot on the trip that nobody can take, and it won't be filled if he doesn't come. So he's either going to cost us more money across the board, or he's going to come and have a blast with us. What's it going to be, Jim?
Oh, on the spot? I can't commit to that right now. I want to come back to something real quick. Rob, you were very dismissive of skillies. What don't you love about white marlin?
No, I mean, I do like white marlin, but if we caught one, the problem is I would want to eat it, and I had enough ice and space planned for tuna fish.
I did hear they're good to eat.
They're excellent, actually. White marlin, whether on the grill or smoked, is unbelievable.
I was relaying the story to my neighbor Nick Haney, and he goes, would Rob have killed that if he wanted to? I was like, I bet if I asked, he would have. But he goes, they are tremendous eating, and
they are actually very underrated table fare. And the other thing too is that it was kind of a distraction, right? When our main goal is tuna and the shiny things. We're 4 miles. We were 4 miles short, and I really wanted to be there at a certain time because I really wanted to get on that quick Ronzi bite that happens right before. That sun cannot be up. So there's that special window.
And at the end of the day, we didn't have white marlin stuff. We were doing our best with tuna stuff.
Yeah. I mean, they would have, if we had spent time, they would have eaten. I mean, we saw several.
Yeah.
They were there, but I just wanted to get out and accomplish what we wanted. I mean, in my mind, I was like, it'll be more fun if we could catch our tuna, come back to the white marlin and mess with them a little bit more in the daytime. There would probably be a little, he was sort of bitey, but you notice that he would engage, but he wouldn't commit, right? And a lot of times we find that getting bit, my buddy Adam Nelson and his friend Chris Aw, they found that getting bit with white marlin on the Ron Z, a lot of it is cast. As soon as a white marlin engages, you open the bail. And he'll sound, and he's going to catch up to that thing. It's on the falls where you get those bites.
That's so
Whereas you could tell, we could get him to engage, but without that light, right? Because it was pretty much pitch black dark still.
Oh, yeah.
He would go down, but he would come back up after because he would lose it. Whereas during the day, if he could keep his, sight, right? Much better sight fishing, he would be able to see it, and then they would crush it. And that works the best. Other than having scup and eels and whatnot, also work, but I have found with that Ronzi, it's like if you can lead him, as soon as he engages, open the bail. As it sinks, he goes down. As soon as that line stops, the line will physically stop, and you just set the hook, and you're on.
So all right. I wanted to know. I wanted to know because I know what it's like to fish with you. So I know what it's like to fish with you in situations where the person you're fishing with hasn't been in that situation a bunch of times. And you're a great teacher. So I was like drilling Jim. I'm like, what was Rob saying over your shoulder? What was he telling you to do? What did he tell you after that fish you didn't come tight on that fish? Because I'm like, what did he do wrong? So if I'm in that situation, because I thought it was cool that you told him to stop it and the fish sounded after the bait. And I was wondering in my mind if, Jim said, I just reeled and kind of leaned into it. It wasn't a hook set. In my mind, I'm like, kind of like you said, a circle hook.
It was a half-hearted bite. Yeah, he did come tight for a second. But the thing is, I just, in that low light condition, look at, when I say low light, it was low light. We could barely see the fish on the surface. Sure. We actually had to stop for a second to really identify shark or white marlin. And then, once we saw that they were white marlin, we were able to stop. I think that, if it had been lighter and there was more sun, the bite probably would have stuck. And I'm racing against the fleet and trying to make sure that we're there first to do what we got to do. So, look at if we had spent another half hour, of course we could have got one. But it wasn't a white marlin trip. We were tuna. Big Jim needed to get his first tuna. It's all I cared about. Big Jim and tuna.
I like it.
So, Mike, Jigging World rods are available. It used to just be out of the shop in New Jersey.
Used to
correct?
be.
And
yes.
online.
Yep.
Now you guys have distribution all the way down to Florida, up to Maine. Is that right?
Yep.
And any internationally?
Not at this. No, not at the moment.
Do you know of anybody who's taking the rods? What's the coolest thing you know of caught on Jigging World tackle?
Oh, the coolest. I don't know right off the top of my head, but I know that a lot of rods are being, brought to Panama.
You went to
South
Venice
America.
with them, right?
We went to Venice recently. People are looking at me like all weird on other boats. There's this picture that I posted up on my Instagram. So I took the luminous slow pitch rod and we're jigging in 300 feet of water while these guys were going after the same exact species, red snappers, with electric reels, with a rod, with a bent butt in the rod holder. And then it was a very small wreck, and both captains knew each other, so we just were fishing right next to each other for a split second. And I go up to the bow, and I start jigging with the luminous slow pitch rod, like a little skinny rod. And they look at me, they're like, what are you gonna do with that rod? They start laughing at me. And then once I got tight, they started taking pictures, videos for me.
Oh, it's awesome.
And it was epic.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's my one trip to Venice. It was like if I could have had I would have given anything to have my own gear because they just were not the guys I was fishing with. And I'm sure it's changed since then. I'm sure more guys are getting into the jig and pop. Mm-hmm. So my one trip to Venice, I would have given anything to have my own gear there. And those guys, they have their own programs. They like the slow troll live bait. They like heavier tackle. And I'm sure now that there are probably jig and pop guys. I know Northeast guys go down there, catch big yellowfin. There was a big thing this winter, guys.
Right. Yeah. Look at when Kevin went down there, a lot of those guys were amazed that, you could put a 200-pound yellowfin boat side on the spinning gear and the jigging tackle that we use in 25, 30 minutes. Those yellowfin are big and angry down there. You got to remember, we're from the land of bluefin, which are much bigger and also more angry. And we're able to stop those.
I've asked several people whether yellowfin fight harder than bluefin, assuming that it's bluefin. And I've had a lot of people tell me yellowfin, but I don't think that maybe they have the experience with our bluefin
it could be true. So a 200-pound yellowfin may fight harder than a 200-pound bluefin, but, an 800-pound bluefin definitely fights harder than a 200-pound yellowfin.
No, dude, Midas right, dude. That's the one rule of the world.
Where are you guys taking us to dinner? Come on.
This is literally what I'm working on right now. I'm trying to see if
So
my
I
wife
have
can
actually
call
one
the
question
babysitter.
for you guys.
Yeah.
Who knows what nexus means? Do you guys know what the nexus means? Like, what is the definition of nexus? So I got a cool story for you. So obviously everyone knows Nexus being our most popular rod series. I'm going to give credit where credit is due. I am not the one who named Nexus. I pretty much name most of the rods nowadays, but Nexus is not the one that I named. It was actually Ralph Kraft from Crafty One Customs. So he's the one that gave the idea to call this new inshore series the Nexus on the Nexus OGs. So I was like, what does that even mean? Because every time that we put something out or we name something, I want to know the underlying meaning of it. And I don't know if this was planned, but Nexus means a connection of multiple things. At the moment in time, I was like, oh, okay, cool name. Let's go. Let's run with it. Fast forward 7-8 years later. It's kind of fitting and surreal that the Nexus is like the nucleus of Jigging Worlds, where number one, the desire for the Nexus rods from a dealer level is what really helped accelerate our brand growth. The Nexus is our most popular series to our customer base. Nexus rod allowed the relationship between you and me to probably happen too.
Yeah.
And even us. So it's kind of crazy how it all unraveled and we look 7 years later, Nexus being still to this day our number one seller, and it just being like going back to like the nucleus of Jigging World. Isn't that kind of cool?
I like that, man. I love when stuff works out like that.
It worked out a lot better than the Geeko jigs.
Let's not go there. But don't Google Geeko. But we do have slow pitch jigs called the Geeko jigs. They actually slay for black sea bass.
They do.
They do.
I've caught a lot on them. Name backfire. Yeah, Jimmy just Googled it.
No, not yet. Let's see my hair blow back if I did.
G-I-K-O, by the way. Okay. Dude, it's so awesome to have you guys up, and I'm looking forward to many more exploits out in the water and
Appreciate
continuing
you
to
all.
fish together.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for letting me tag along, Mike.
Oh, dude.
I was just sitting on
Thank you
land
for
rotting.
coming.
Yeah.